It's time to return to the world of Whoville, straight from the pages of Dr. Seuss, and brought to life on the big screen for the very first time in the year 2000, for the live-action adaptation of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, where Jim Carrey plays the Grinch, a grumpy creature who wants to ruin Christmas for everyone by stealing it, but along the way learns the true meaning of Christmas himself. In this film that's well acted, visually impressive, but left some people somewhat underwhelmed when it was released. So let's go back to this well-meaning but sometimes divisive movie by exploring 10 things that you didn't know about How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It's time for the viewer to explore 10 things you didn't know plus more. I wouldn't do this review in 9, I wouldn't do it in 8, but 10 is what I do. Don't procrastinate. So hurry up before I get the gout and come on board and check it out. Number 10. The Grinch was a reflection of Dr. Seuss. The children's storybook How the Grinch Stole Christmas was published in 1957 and written by famed children's author and illustrator Dr. Seuss. The story was set in the fictional town of Whoville, where a grumpy green furry creature called the Grinch wants to ruin Christmas for everyone by stealing the town's Christmas presents and decorations, so the town can be as unhappy and as mean as he is. But in actual fact, the theft that he commits doesn't stop the town from celebrating its Christmas cheer, where the Grinch learns the true meaning of Christmas isn't just presents and things, but the joy that comes from the heart, which causes the Grinch's heart to grow 3 sizes. So it's a classic learning the true meaning of Christmas kind of story. And the book has gone down to become an important part of children's literature. The Grinch came to be because on the day after Christmas Day in 1956, Dr. Seuss was in his bathroom brushing his teeth when he looked in the mirror and felt that he himself looked like a Grinch. This was because Dr. Seuss had become weary and disillusioned with Christmas at that time due to its commercialism. And he was also going through personal difficulties at that time due to his wife suffering from health problems. Seuss saw that this Grinch character was a reflection of his own grumpy mood, where he himself would discover the true meaning of Christmas by using this experience to write How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So it's actually kind of a personal story. Number 9. Then there was an animated movie narrated by Frankenstein's monster. In December the 18th, 1966, an animated special of The Grinch was broadcast on CBS and produced by MGM Television. The special was developed and co-directed by Chuck Jones, who was a famous animator for Warner Brothers, best known for his work on Looney Tunes. And the special was narrated by Boris Karloff, who also incidentally provided the voice of the Grinch. He is no doubt best known as being the iconic face of Frankenstein's monster from the 1931 Frankenstein movie. The 36-minute special was praised and would go on to become a classic and an alternative introduction to The Grinch for those who hadn't read the book. And it also introduced the iconic song You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, which had its lyrics written by Dr. Seuss himself. In the following years after, The Grinch would return in a few more animated specials, including Halloween is Grinch Night in 1977 and The Grinch Grinches the Cat in the Hat in 1982. Now, you may be wondering why a movie adaptation didn't come sooner. Well, because Dr. Seuss refused to sell any of his books to be made into movies. This concept was not on his horizon. Number 8. The long list of requirements to make a Grinch movie. Dr. Seuss sadly passed away in 1991, and in the wake of his passing, his widow, Audrey Geisel, started to tip her toes, so to speak, into the merchandising of her late husband's characters. You know, the odd bit of marketing here and there. Finally, in 1998, the film rights for How the Grinch Stole Christmas were up for sale, with the sale itself being at the hands of Audrey Geisel, with her having the final say as to who she allows to buy the movie rights. But it came with a list of terms and conditions. These include an upfront payment of $5 million, The Seuss estate was also to receive 4% of the movie's box office earnings, as well as 50% of revenue from merchandise generated by the movie, 70% of book and music tie-in profits, and only a director could be hired to direct The Grinch if they had previously made a movie that grossed at least $1 million, as well as a big-time talented actor chosen to play the Grinch. According to Wikipedia, some of the actors mentioned in the list include Jack Nicholson, Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, Robin Williams, and of course Jim Carrey. Now these terms and conditions may seem pretty full on, but when the sale went public, it was an all-out war of movie studios to try and pitch and get a Grinch movie made. Yep, everyone wanted a slice of this pie. Number 7. Ron Howard was hesitant to get involved. So many filmmakers across the board were trying to develop a Grinch movie and submit their outlines or scripts, in hopes that Audrey Geisel would approve and sell them the rights. These included the Farrelly brothers, John Hughes, and Tom Shadyac. 20th Century Fox was outlining a Grinch movie, which would have starred Jack Nicholson, and many other studios were also trying to get in on the Grinch action, including Paramount Pictures and New Line Cinema. Then Universal Studios came along with their own vision of how the Grinch stole Christmas, which ultimately was rejected by Seuss's widow, Audrey. However, not feeling defeated yet, Universal wanted a big-time filmmaker to help pitch the movie again. To this time give their vision more momentum, and they approached Tim Burton, but he turned them down as he was too busy making Sleepy Hollow at that time. The company then enlisted the services of Ron Howard in order to help get their vision off the ground. After all, at that stage, he was a big-time director, directing many hits like Splash, Cocoon, Backdraft, and Apollo 13, and many more. However, initially, Howard wasn't really interested at that time, as he was trying to develop a movie version of The Seawolf. However, Howard went with Universal to pitch the movie again to Audrey Geisel. And it's here that he started to become intrigued with the Who's, particularly the character of Cindy Lou Who, as well as expanding more on the backstory of the Grinch. So now his interest was piqued. And well, the pitch meeting worked, and he became the movie's director and producer. And it is said that Universal would pay $9 million for the film rights to How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And of course, the movie would be co-produced by Brian Grazer, who previously worked with Howard on many of his movies, including Splash and Apollo 13, and would go on to work with him again on A Beautiful Mind. Number 6. Trials and Dilemmas. Writers Jeffrey Price and Peter S. Seaman were hired to write a screenplay. They had previously written the screenplays for Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Doc Hollywood, and at that time had just worked on the screenplay for Wild Wild West. Okay, we can only imagine that Seuss's widow didn't see that movie, or she may not have approved their hiring. All up, they would make 8 drafts of the script, because each script would have to get approval from Audrey Geisel, as she had final control over the script. And she would often remove jokes that she felt were off the cuff or inappropriate, as well as removing references to other Seuss characters like the Cat in the Hat. Several writers from Seinfeld, including Alec Berg, David Mandel, and Jeff Schaffer, would also make uncredited rewrites to the script. Another big hassle facing the production was who could play the Grinch. Despite some big names being thrown around as mentioned, the actor who the production was seriously considering hiring was Full House actor John Stamos. However, things didn't work out, as he was allergic to all the prosthetic makeup that he would have had to have worn in order to play the part, so he dropped out. Now, during the 90s, Jim Carrey had become a big-time star, starring in many big hits like Dumb and Dumber, The Mask, and Batman Forever, and many others, proving that he had a unique energy and physicality. And he actually wanted to play the part of the Grinch, so he met up with Audrey Geisel and got her approval, and so he was cast. Number 5. Makeup woes and strains. The Grinch's makeup effects and costume were provided by the legendary movie makeup effects wizard Rick Baker, who provided cutting-edge makeup effects for movies such as An American Werewolf in London, Harry and the Hendersons, and Men in Black. And wow, the makeup really does bring the Grinch to life in a spectacular way. However, according to Baker, the studio originally just wanted him to paint Jim Carrey green, and well, that was it. Which Baker didn't think was a good idea. And after some footage of this makeup test of a green painted Jim Carrey was leaked, it was then decided to just let Baker do his thing. I mean, obviously the guy knows what he's doing. The costume was absolute torture for Jim Carrey to wear. It was really smothering and heavy, and made him feel like he was being buried alive. In fact, wearing the Grinch costume was so full on, Carrey had to get trained by a CIA agent in order to learn skills to be able to cope and endure with the costume. Yeah, it was that bad. He had to get trained by special agents to teach him skills to deal with torturous situations, in this case, being in a bloody horrible movie costume, just to be able to deal with it. According to an article on the Huffington Post, to try and cope with this ordeal, Carrey would smoke, but he would have to be provided with a very large ashtray to make sure that his costume didn't go up in flames. I mean, after all, apparently it was entirely made out of yak hair. It would also take up to 2.5 hours to apply Carrey with his Grinch makeup and costume. He would also have to wear yellow eye contact lenses, but apparently they were so unbearable he couldn't really wear them, to which the yellow of his eyes would be added digitally in post. Number 4. Tensions on set. Most of the movie's shoot took place on the Universal Studios backlot, with the Whoville set being located just behind the infamous Bates Motel house from Psycho. However, it seems that making How the Grinch Stole Christmas was an endurance test for Jim Carrey, which would often make him snap and lose his temper. By accounts, he was really irritable and grouchy on set, making working with him unpleasant, and apparently he was just being really mean to everyone. Now, Carrey is a method actor, so it could be that he was just channeling the character of the Grinch in order to play the part. Sure, but it kind of went beyond that, as Carrey would also often just leave the set during the shoots. Yeah, he would just walk out and be gone, which caused huge delays in filming. Going back to Wikipedia, only 3 days of filming had been accomplished within a 2-week time span. One person who had just had enough with Carrey's bad treatment and his constant absconding was makeup artist Kazuhiro, who, as mentioned, just had enough and left the production. However, Ron Howard and Rick Baker were able to persuade Hiro to come back, and Jim Carrey agreed to control his temper and treatment of others. One thing we have to keep in mind before we turn this into the let's talk about how awful Jim Carrey is show, it is said that wearing that costume was like trying to endure torture. I mean, yeah, it looked terrific on screen, but it clearly came at a cost. Apparently, like, it was really, really extremely bad wearing it. Like, this was a terribly, terribly unpleasant experience. Okay, that is something we can't overlook. So maybe having to go through such an extreme and unpleasant experience just made Carrey lose it a little. Also, keep in mind he had to wear that costume for 92 days. On one day in particular, Ron Howard tried to cheer Carrey up by donning the Grinch costume himself. And he also had Don Knotts visit the set upon learning that Carrey was a fan of Don Knotts. So at least Howard was trying to keep his actor happy and keep the moods up on set. And hey, Eddie Murphy in his Nutty Professor makeup also visited the set, because he was at the Universal Studios at that time filming the Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps. And you know, that's gotta be good. I mean, come on, it's Eddie Murphy. There's an irony that Jim Carrey was playing the Grinch, and in playing that part, he became a Grinch. What am I doing with my hands? But yeah, he became a Grinch in real life by the sounds of it. So what can we take away from his behaviour? Really unprofessional or genius method acting? You be the judge. Number 3, the music of the Grinch. The musical score of The Grinch was composed by the legendary late James Horner, who was something of a movie-scoring juggernaut at that time, having scored many big movies, including but not limited to Aliens, Jumanji, Apollo 13, Braveheart, and his crowning achievement, Titanic. His music in The Grinch is pure Christmas childhood joy, and has a timeless magical feel about it. Horner wrote the score in just 6 weeks, and when his orchestra recorded the music, they placed Christmas trees around the studio in order to get the musicians in the mood and to remind them that they're making music for the Grinch. Going back to the Huffington Post, the song Welcome Christmas was actually written in complete gibberish, intended to sound like ancient Roman Latin. Speaking of music, the little girl who played Cindy Lou Who, Taylor Monson, would grow up to have her own musical career, where she became the lead singer of a rock band called The Pretty Reckless. And, well, this is what she looks like now. They grow up fast. And by the looks of it, she's still friends with Jim Carrey. Cool. Number 2, huge hit with meh reviews. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was released in November in the year 2000. Although in some parts of the world, the movie was just simply titled The Grinch. In fact, here in Australia, I can remember it just being called The Grinch. This is because someone in the marketing felt that people outside America wouldn't really know about the book How the Grinch Stole Christmas, because silly never takes a day off. The movie was hugely successful, bringing in a ton of finances and accolades. It made $347 million on its $123 million budget, making it the highest grossing US movie in the year 2000, and the 6th highest globally. How the Grinch Stole Christmas also won an Academy Award for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, and Jim Carrey was nominated for a Golden Globe for his performance as the Grinch. In addition to all of that, How the Grinch Stole Christmas would become the 2nd highest grossing holiday movie of all time, right after Home Alone. Yep, we're in Home Alone territories now, so it must have been a spectacular movie. And yet the reviews were pretty underwhelmingly meh. Now don't get me wrong, Jim Carrey's performance was praised, as was the look of the movie, but it was felt that, other than that, there just wasn't much to it. Although the San Francisco Chronicle felt like Jim Carrey was ultimately talking in a Sean Connery impersonation and found it baffling. Yeah, I can understand that. Roger Ebert felt that Carrey worked really hard in the movie, harder than any actor in any movie could, but ultimately all this effort was to small avail. In other words, all that work and effort for nothing. I can remember at the time, some of my friends saw it and said it was okay, just nothing particularly special. You know, mid and vanilla and forgettable. The Grinch currently has 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I actually find really disappointing, with the site claiming that you're better off watching the original 1966 cartoon. And despite its Academy Award win, The Grinch was also nominated for 2 Razzie Awards, including Worst Remake or Sequel, and several of the songs in the movie were nominated for Stinker's Bad Movie Awards. But despite all that, when it was released on home video, The Grinch would become the 2nd highest selling live-action video after Titanic. So needless to say, this does seem to be a pretty divisive movie. It just seems that everyone either really loved it or really hated it. Number 1. Legacy of the Grinch. A few years after the release of The Grinch, a live-action Cat in the Hat movie was released in 2003. Only this time its reception was worse, with a lot of people flat out hating the movie and finding it to be pop cultural graffiti to Dr. Seuss's original book. But unlike How the Grinch Stole Christmas, The Cat in the Hat was a box office bomb. And worse yet, Seuss's widow, Audrey Geisel, was so appalled by the movie, she immediately cancelled any further live-action movies based on her late husband's work, and put a ban on any more Dr. Seuss books being converted into live-action films, which immediately cancelled A Cat in the Hat 2, which was in the works. She was so annoyed and frustrated with that Cat in the Hat movie, she felt that if any other adaptations were made, Hollywood would only screw it up. And well, yeah. So this meant that for this theatrical version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, it was no more. A one and done movie. We would not be returning back to this theatrical world. And look, you know what? Maybe that's for the best. Maybe Dr. Seuss's books are better enjoyed as books, their intended mediums. Maybe when Dr. Seuss wrote How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he wasn't thinking about his story becoming a movie and being converted into a PlayStation game. Although, as recent as 2024, Jim Carrey said that he would be open to return as the Grinch, but on the condition that his performance was in motion capture, given how painful it was to perform as the character. In 2008, there would be a How the Grinch Stole Christmas musical stage show. In 2018, Universal would produce another theatrical Grinch movie, this one in animation, with Benedict Cumberbatch voicing the Grinch. And yet again, this movie was also a massive hit, with it becoming the highest grossing Christmas movie of all time. Ha! I'm telling ya, people seem to really love going to the movie theatre to see Grinch movies. Whether they're good or bad or somewhere in between, they can't seem to get enough of them. But that's a story for another time. In 2020, there was a televised version of the Grinch musical, which was broadcast on NBC. And more recently, and very oddly, there was an unlicensed slasher movie version called The Mean One, which I've never even heard of till now. But hey, I guess we're all learning together. But yeah, that sounds kind of insane. The Grinch running around killing people. I somehow have the feeling this one wasn't endorsed by Audrey Geisel. As for that movie that came out in the cold winter of 2000, well, I think it has its place. And I think that children who grew up with it have a nostalgic love for it, so I respect that. The movie looks visually gorgeous, and Jim Carrey's energetic performance is on cue and is a total scene stealer. So, although I personally didn't think it's a masterpiece, I think it's a very serviceable movie that children and adults will enjoy and have a good time with. Look, I see the Grinch as being something of an experiment. A time when Hollywood was trying to make the world of Dr. Seuss a live-action, physical reality, when in actual fact, it's a unique world that actually thrives in illustration and animation, and trying to turn these visuals into something live-action creates something garish and kind of disturbing looking and sort of nightmare fuel. But look, it's worth it for its Christmas charm and Jim Carrey's performance. Anyway, I'm Minty, and by the sounds of it, the true villain of the Grinch movie was Jim Carrey's costume. See ya!